I'm so glad that you're here and that I can share this project that I've been working on with you. If you remember, I had a quilt from 20 years ago that I made, all by hand, by the way, and I wanted to replicate that some, but I didn't want to do all that handwork again. I wanted to do it totally by machine. But I loved this quilt so much, and I got so many compliments on it that I really wanted to make another one. I love them. I absolutely love these two quilts. So this quilt, like I said before, was totally made by hand, and it was made 20 years ago. And everything on it, even though it's not perfect, I stitched together by hand. That influenced me to make this quilt, but I didn't want to make it by hand again. That was very time consuming on this one. I wanted to make it a little bit bigger, which I did, and I wanted to make it completely by machine. Nothing done by hand, not even the binding. So these are my two quilts, and I'm just barely finishing this one off, but let's compare the quilts and see what's the difference. This quilt I made 20 years ago, and I made it pretty much the way that the pattern told me to make it, except for I did do everything by hand. These are the hankies. They're 8.5 inches. I did exactly what they said about putting everything around here, but when it came to the batting that I put in here, I used a fluffy batting, which at the time, 20 years ago, was a pretty common batting. I wouldn't use that batting today. It doesn't wear as well. It doesn't look to me quite as nice, but this looks cute. I like it the way that it is. I used the fabrics that I had on hand at the time, which I like. If you were to look at this, because I did do this all by hand, you'd see that there are some places that aren't maybe as even as they should be, because the accuracy will be just a little bit off with hand sewing. The other thing that you might notice if you got up close is I did not put any lining or any stay flex or anything that would make these hankies more stable. That wasn't available to me at the time, and it was not mentioned in the pattern either. And so what you have behind each of these hankies is you just have the batting. In the new quilt, I've been able to do a better job of stabilizing those fabrics, and they'll age better and they'll wear better because they have been stabilized with that interfacing. So those are just some of the things that I've changed. The one important thing I noticed when I looked on the back of the quilt is it has very minimal quilting on it. And that's because all of the quilting is by hand, and of course that's time consuming. But the rule of thumb today is that if you quilt something, you should be quilting things and not leave spaces bigger than about your fist so that your batting doesn't pucker on you. So you can see here, I should have put some quilting in some other areas to make sure that it was totally uniform all the way around this quilt and it doesn't look poofy in one place and flat in other places. So I think I am going to go back and do just a little bit more hand quilting on this. The binding is all done by hand, and I'm very happy with that. It was sewn from the front to the back, and then it was stitched down on the back. So that's all fine. I also used a backing for the fabric that is not 100% cotton, and that is not something that I would do today. I use 100% cotton, nice materials to make things. I just was learning when I started this quilt. I love this quilt. Please understand, I love this quilt, and I'm very proud of it, especially that I did do it all by hand. But I would do things differently, and did do things differently, when I made the other quilt totally by machine. I am going to be hand quilting this area on this hanky right here. And I'm going to be doing it with this quilting needle, which is probably a little bit hard to see because it's quite small and it's very thin, and with thread that has been knotted at the end, and I'll be pulling that through so that the knot will be inside the quilt. I'm going to start right here and do that. And I get to that point where that knot is, and I just give it a little tug, and it goes right, well, it didn't go right in, but it normally goes right in through and stays and is knotted in there. So there we go. Now that's good. Okay, so here's the line that I'll be quilting on right here. And I got my one hand underneath to feel as I come through. I'm taking little stitches and I'm doing little spaces. So here is where that is. You can see me go up and down. And there's kind of a rocking motion that goes with that with your needle. You're using your two hands to do that rocking motion. This is not super great quilting, but it's doing the job that I want, and I'm perfectly happy with it. So up and down and up and down. And then you pull that through to get those quilting stitches, and you can see how that has gone around there. I'm now right here, and I'll be going around this curve doing it also. I won't be saying anything else other than this is a fun thing to be doing. It's a really relaxing and creative thing to do, and it doesn't take a lot of your brain work, so it's very calming and nice. And I'm gonna This is my current quilt, my current hanky quilt, and it's totally made by machine. And by machine, I mean sewing machine, quilting machine, machine. I have not done anything by hand on this quilt, nor will I as I finish the binding. Let me tell you or point out some of the things that are far different than the other quilt. The first one is you'll notice that this quilt is not poofy. It doesn't have that poofy batting to it. And so it looks like a flatter quilt. If you were to see the quilting on this, the quilting is totally uniform on this. That's because it was done by my long arm, and there are no gaps, there are no places where anything was missed. So that's the one reason it does look so uniform and so nice and clean. The precision that you can get when you use a machine to piece is, for me anyway, it's far better than doing it by hand. So that is another thing. This quilt is a little bit larger because I did put a couple of borders on it. I put a thin border here, and I put an outside thicker border there because I did want it just a little bit bigger, so I modified it. You'll also notice that the binding is not completely done, but I wanted to show you the difference. On the other quilt, you sew your binding to the front and you flip it to the back and stitch it down by hand. On this quilt, you do just the opposite. You sew it to the back and then you flip it to the front, like I'm doing here. You flip it to the front and you use machine to sew that down. Which is the better way? Neither one really. They're both good ways, and they both look really nice. I wanted to have this a totally machine-made quilt, and that's what I have. I'm going to show you a little bit of what the back looks like so that you can see that that quilting is very uniform. There's not any big gaps or poofs that stand out, and it looks really, really nice. I was very pleased with the quilting on this. But that's the difference between the two quilts. It doesn't necessarily mean that I like this one better or I like the other one better. What it does mean is I use different techniques and I use different materials. So those are the main things that show up as differences in the two quilts. Two quilts, two beautiful quilts. They're both done now. This one's done after a 20-year hiatus, and I just had to finish some of the quilting on this so that it would be quilted a little bit more properly than when I first began. And this quilt, our new quilt, is also finished. I have all the binding on that, and it turned out really fun also. I like both these quilts. I'm proud of both of these quilts. I hope you enjoy learning and doing these quilts with us, or projects that are similar to them. You can always make little changes so that things come out more yours than anything else. The main goal here is using your creativity and having fun and finding joy in the things that you make and that you do. Remember to thumbs up, and we'd love to have you subscribe and join us for more fun activities, more creative endeavors, and certainly fun times together. Thanks for joining me. We sure appreciate your visit.